how about elevator pitch? Which one of the elevator pitches were you all attracted to? What told the story best?
I was really
This is
drawn
Marcy.
to a pitch that starts with a challenge instead of just a telling. This
Like
is
that.
our system. This is what it does.
Yeah.
So there were at least two, maybe three that started with a clear challenge, so that the person in the elevator with you can relate to that challenge, and then you can tell what the system is about.
Excellent. That is such a great idea. And I have to say, when I'm asked about my job here, after 18 years of working here, I almost never see someone's like light bulb go off when I'm telling them what I do. And then finally one day, like the week before, I told someone what I did, and then we were taking a walk. I was like, okay, so here's what happened. I was a teacher. I didn't know how to teach. Didn't get great training or coaching. I didn't have a curriculum. These are all things that weren't working for me. And so I went back to school because I want to make sure every teacher has what they need. And that means we got to change the systems that support them. Da, da, da. And she's like, oh, okay, that's what you do. But like I started with the challenge. So that's what made me think of it. So thank you, Peter. All right. What other takeaways did you all get from looking at the elevator pitches?
One of the things that we were talking about is like we liked some of them reading them, but then we were thinking like if we were actually in an elevator and had to say all those words, would we be able to do it? Like there's like the difference between the written elevator pitch and like what you could actually like the intent of the elevator pitch. And so even some of these like at the written level might like move in the right direction, but then like you're like take it one step further of like what would that actually be to say, and you might even have to simplify even further. I see Marcelina said her group liked the Louisiana one, and I think that one's starting to get like a little bit more like speakable. But like even so, it has like some specifics in there that maybe it wouldn't, like we wouldn't need to go into all of those words or something like that,
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked before about making numbers count, and I think I'd have to change my screen for y'all to see it. Making numbers count I think would be really useful on this Louisiana one, right? Because 780,000 kids from birth through 12th, that number works for some people, and a lot of people it's not the stickiest way to say it. So, it's like what portion of the education system or, some other way of giving those numbers. Numbers can be helpful, but it's how you portray them that's really useful. It's certainly short and to the point, right? And that's helpful. Other takeaways about the elevator pitches?
I can tell you a really quick story about my experience with the elevator pitch. Back in 2012, when I was younger and naive and braver than today, I was invited to the White House to talk about dissemination, the beginning of social media. And the CEO from Disney was also invited back in the day, the person who used to be the CEO. And my dream was to start writing for the new blog of Disney, but I was like no one, right? And I remember that I walked to the elevator and she was walking with me. So the elevator closed and I'm like, hey, I'm Eliana Tardillo. I have 2 children with Down syndrome. My dream is to start writing in English and Spanish so everyone knows about inclusion. I don't know much, but I have all the passion. I'm not going to charge you anything. Please take my card. In the times of the small cards, And I was like, thank you so much. Please let me know whenever you want, call me at any time. And she looked at me and was like, what's happening? Then like 2 days later, when Twitter was a big thing, she retweeted one of my tweets and she put like, this person is coming to our team. I love meeting you. And they hired me.
Oh my gosh, what a great story.
Yeah.
And like, did she ever give you feedback on what she heard that made her interested
in that? She told me that it was transparent, that it was authentic, that it was full of passion. And that's what they were looking actually, because it was a blog for parents and they didn't have diversity representation. So it was just the perfect fit for them. And I was the one to start actually writing in Spanish in that blog. So it was such an
wow. And if I was to lean into something else, I would say like you were vulnerable in that situation, which made it more interesting, more human, and probably
Yeah,
connected to her
imagine
as
me
well.
like 12 years ago. If I still have an accent, just imagine me like 12 years. I was so grateful that she actually understood me.
Yeah, that's funny about accents. We had someone, one of our interns was presenting, and I was thinking while she was presenting, I was like, oh, she has the most beautiful accent. And after she goes, I'm so embarrassed, my accent gets so strong when I'm trying to explain these things. I was like, I think it's such an asset, but yeah, great. Well, thank you everyone for thinking through the elevator pitches, for sharing. Thank you, Eliana, for sharing. It's really nice to hear a success story. And I love the fact that you actually had an ending to that of something great happening. So we got some Louisiana, Minnesota. They mentioned families and they were geared toward the public. Yeah, I think Made to Stick is a great tool when you're thinking about these things. I don't think it's again by Chip and Dan Heath, but I don't think they give great directions on how to create an elevator pitch. But I think the general ideas in it of the success principles, which are simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and story. And so what Eliana did to get that job was, I would say, all those things, right? I had all of those elements. Maybe the only, yeah, you even had the credibility, right? Because you were in the field already and they needed that. So, and certainly now you have it. All right. Let's get back to the agenda because we have a couple of different things to share. This is Made to Stick or Making Numbers Count. So engineering delight, just real quick, going back to that idea. So in the Hootsuite webinar, they had a lot of things to say, but one of the things, that engineering delight idea, I really connected with, and they gave some ideas of how to do that. And when you think about some of the emails or Instagrams or tweets that you see, there's lots of like, take this quiz to find out what you are and your personality type or whatever. They also talked about like kindness, not contest, but it's like random acts of kindness and seeing what people are doing and doing hooking onto that. Let me see. I had a couple more I wanted to grab for you all.
And
There
I
you
would
go.
like to officially welcome Andrea Jennifer. She is from our DCAS, the New Center for Disproportionality, and we are colleagues now because I just joined the center. So welcome, Andrea.
Yeah, welcome. We're very glad you're with us. And so quizzes, acts of kindness, week or month, Monday motivation, and audience participation. So looking at who's actually responding, commenting, tagging them, getting to know them, asking them what got them interested in your work so that you can learn from them. So anyways, can't say enough. I'll give you the link to the webinar in case you're interested in learning more. And then I'm going to turn it over to Peter and Rebecca to tell us about the dissemination meetup that they facilitated at the OSEP conference.
Thank you. And thanks to Rebecca, who stepped in for Ileana at the last minute. Dissemination is such a vast topic. I highly recommend having two people facilitate a broad-ranging discussion about it because the questions can come out of nowhere or from every part of the field. So it was interesting that we really didn't have any TA center staff attend. It was mostly academics and state grant applicant. And so it's not just TA centers that need dissemination plans. So that was a bit of a challenge, speaking our TA center dissemination language with folks from other backgrounds, with other needs. But we found out that they were interested to hear how communications and dissemination people talk shop. So that's basically what we did for our time. And everything from like showing a full scale dissemination toolkit. So we showed the Leanna Nordstrom's or Kadri's toolkit, and then that broad brush to all the way to how can you set up a website in 15 minutes by going to a domain registration site. There weren't any questions about AI, which kind of surprised me, but What were your thoughts, Rebecca?
It really was interest in starting from the ground up. I felt like you have nothing. Where do you start? There's no social media presence. There's no newsletters. Like, where do we start? We spent a lot of time just kind of going over a lot of the basic information that we've been sharing here. But I found that like all of us have somewhere to start. Our audience was very much like, we don't even know where to start. So that was just a lot of conversation.
That is not what you expected to walk into, is it?
Nope.
Nope. Rebecca's getting used to walking into something completely different than she expected everywhere she goes. That is interesting. Yeah, I think no doubt everyone needs it. And in case you all didn't get to, there was anyone who didn't come to the OSEP conference, Director Williams talked about our work, this community's work, and for a couple of minutes in the main plenary. So everyone got to hear about it. So we might be getting more knocks on our door not that we're looking for more participants per se. We always welcome folks, but we're not going beyond the TA centers at this point. But potentially we'll have things that we can provide them, resources, ideas over time. So thank you for doing that, Peter and Rebecca. I wanted to, what was I just? Oh, yeah, just along those lines, the Stepping Up projects Stepping Up is technology. Technology projects, hopefully most people are aware of them. 327 and 327S specifically. And they just invited Eliana to be their speaker, and I shared what they're going to be doing. They're looking for, because they're creating this technology program. They've already created it. They're implementing it, learning from the implementation, but then they've got to get it scaled up, sustainable, etc. And so this is what they're going to be talking about in the chat, and they invited Eliana to be their speaker. So a little cross-pollination. All right. So now I'd like to invite Amy Peterson to share about an upcoming free event related to dissemination.
Yeah, so I'll put it in the chat, and I am definitely not an expert in this event or all the logistics or details, but I had sent it on to Ileana and Jennifer earlier this week because I got it through my email, and I've actually participated a couple times years ago, I think at this point, but it's a NIDLR funded center, so different than OSEP funded centers, but they do kind of knowledge translation and dissemination activities as well. And their audience actually, Peter, is interesting to what you were just saying, is a lot more academics, researchers. How do you disseminate your information, your findings, and so on? But I think some of the pieces that they kind of highlighted in their agenda that they were going to talk about were things that we've talked about around storytelling and some of these other pieces, and engaging participants in the work and in the dissemination of the work. And so it's a free 3-day conference. I think it's like 3 afternoons, and you can pick and choose, like just go to like one session. You don't have to go to like the whole conference, and it's not really interactive is what I remember. I mean, I haven't participated in a while, but if people are interested, have some time on those dates. I think they do record them and they're available after the fact. So definitely, I think there's like past years and stuff up there. Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful for some folks. Again, I mean, I'm not an expert in their work, but the knowledge translation like work is actually quite interesting every time I've heard about it. It's just kind of a little bit of a different bend on kind of how we've addressed some of that stuff. So.
Thank you, Amy. I immediately took it and shared it with all of Research Practice and OSEP. So I thought it looked fantastic. It is during the SPDIG national meeting, so I was hoping that they'll have a recording of it because I will watch it. All right, and great finding the elevator speech in that, Mary. I thought that they described everything really well as well. And with that, Mary and Dana from Intact C have a question to pose for us about how different centers are looking at things. So Mary and Dana,
Great.
I'll invite you.
Yeah, I'll start and Dana jump in. So how much time do we have, Jennifer? Just,
We are being fluid today. We would
as
like
much as
time
you
for
need.
Rebecca.
oh boy.
We're being
Okay.
fluid.
So just to put some things into context, NTAC, many of you may know, we're a TA&D center, and we serve 2 different agencies. So our impact is on education and voc rehab. So, which is pretty unique as a TA&D center. And what we wanted to be able to do when we first launched was to be able to report information about those unique roles, because we're serving so many different audiences in that respect. So we kind of wanted to know what people's roles were when they were coming on our website or downloading our resources. So we wanted to know about their role, whether they were a VR counselor or a state admin, the agency they work for, what their organization is, some of that sort of user level data, what state they're from. And so we created user accounts where folks, when they come on our site, they can set up an account, but when they download resources, they have to kind of log in again, and so that we can track that level, that sort of finite level data. We also use Google Analytics, which I think many of you probably do. But by logging on, they can collect much more detail. So we are finding that there's some barriers to that. And so, in terms of other people being able to access our information. So the question that we have for you all, and we've got a question in multiple parts, of course. So first up is, the grand tour question is, how do you all collect and report user level data, particularly to the Department of Education? So as part of our APR, we're able to collect a lot of data to share. So kind of what data analytics do you use and report? What are your methods to obtain the data that you report? And in particular, how many of you are able to collect data on some of those more granular level users of state role downloads, what folks are downloading from the site, et cetera. I know Catherine Fowler, who is the primary PI for the project, has been in touch with many of you. So I do have some notes from some of you. And we just, kind of like to start with, what do you report and how do you report it? How do you collect it?
Before we move there, I have a question, Mary. So does the data collection need to be continuous? That's why you have the registration or the login and the resources lag behind that? Or can you think about changing that way to collect data by doing like a survey or something that is optional for people so you don't lose people in the attempt to find your resources?
Yeah, we do. In the past, we have sent out surveys with very low response rate.
Because the situation right now is that information, it is supposed to be accessible, and creating, like a login request, you are probably, yes, like making people leave your page because there are so many options. Yes, thinking about that.
Yeah, we understand. That's why we're interested in how you all do it. Like, do you all use Google Analytics? What else do you use? How are you all doing it so that we can emulate the good work?
For NCSI, we use Google Analytics, and it has a lot of good information in terms of demographics. So you can see who is viewing your information, how many unique users do you have, how many views do you have. You can pretty much collect all kind of information from Google Analytics. And it's very organic. So once you create your first report, you can keep using the same data points.
It's aggregate data, yes. Yes.
Yeah, we also use Google Analytics for some of the centers that I work on, but I think you were talking about kind of the audience level and trying to understand who is the actual people. And I think that's a challenge with that, right? Like, you can get information about kind of general, but you don't know, this is a teacher or this is a really, or whatever.
Right.
We tried in how we set up kind of our report is like based on some of the resources to like disaggregate like people that are typically coming to these types of resources we think are likely this type of audience, and like are they then finding other resources that we think fit that audience type, rather than trying to prescribe or get people to say like who they are on the front end. So I mean, it's definitely not scientific in any way. We don't know that that's actually an educator if they're coming to the educator page and looking at the resources we think are most designed for educators. But if they are primarily looking at those resources and engaging with those resources, we kind of see like, oh, likelihood is that they're finding resources that are related, or if they're like a trainer or something like that, they're mostly looking at the training kind of resources. So we did some kind of like workarounds in order to get to that audience piece, because we just weren't able to get to that without, like you said, that way to ask people ahead of time. And we've done surveys in the past too, and we haven't had great response rate. Like you never know. Like it depends on kind of the resource.
Amy, can I follow up with you real quick? Is your site, when you said going to teacher resources and that, is your site organized by I'm this type of user, I'm that type of user?
We have some pages, that are like primarily audience specific collection. So educators.
So that gives you a little bit of
so on. I mean, again, a lot of it is fluid. Like people could potentially
go
a lot of different places, but
right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anybody using anything other than Google Analytics? I don't know if there's any, oh no, this is from the VR side. Somebody we talked to on the VR side, the quality site, said they use -this. Has anybody heard of that? -this.com. It allows us to connect Google Analytics and other media channels together to gather data in one location. Anybody tried that? Okay.
It's like the Hootsuite of analytics.
So any other ways you're collecting some of the more user level data? So at the level, Amy, you described how you've kind of done it. Anybody doing anything differently?
Well, then you have the combination of data analytics also with social media dissemination that not necessarily is gonna give you, like specifics, but you can also, connect where people go. But that will be for dissemination, right? For disseminating specific resources. But again, there will be the barrier of having to log in to actually disseminate and be sure that people go back. So yeah, that will be my only consideration, like maybe you have to think about how to make that more accessible, considering also that right now we are going against the tendency of people to disseminate like non-research information, and we want like scientific and research-based information to be available so we can go against the misinformation. So that's a good point also, to try to make information accessible without having to log in and all that.
And Rebecca, you said in the chat we had an optional data form submission for some of our resources.
So
can you just describe that a little bit more for us? That'd be super helpful.
When we're trying it out with our interactive lessons right now. So to gain access to our interactive lessons on our website, people have to submit an email to start with. By getting their email, we can then see, for example, if they're from a government agency or an EDU agency, and then someone can break that down a little bit. One of the things we're playing with, and I don't know if you guys have seen this, we've had some conversations, but what I'm finding is a lot of for-profit agencies collect some of your information in order to get a downloadable resource.
Yes.
We've been having some conversations of the pros and cons to that, right? Because as a center, we don't want to collect unnecessary information that we don't need, but we kind of need it. Like, I want to know who is downloading our briefs, who are downloading our hexagon tool, who is downloading those things for our impact and our reach and our data for our APR, right? But I can't drill down. And so but then it's like our AI hub is over 200 resources. So what resources do we require that? And what does that look like on our end? And so we've just been having that's why I'm like fascinated by this conversation right now, because that's what we're trying to decide, like, is that appropriate to do or not, based on how our funding is set up. So,
That's what.
Yeah, we've done some of that before, not with this website, but with another one. And it's a marketing thing a lot of times with white papers and things. Yeah. And as a user myself, I find that really annoying. I'd rather just log in and right. But and then we have access to training too. And we've tossed around, do you have some things that are wide open and some things that are login? And then we went with, well, then your user doesn't know what is what. And so you might be confusing them. On the other side, we have over 25,000 account holders on our site. The other thing is it bogs down the site. We have over 500 documents on our site too, which is a lot. So every time it counts, it really bogs it down. But we have really granular data. So, and
maybe
some people who have a problem with it and some people don't seem to have a problem with it. So
maybe it could be also, like linking the resources, so you can create like a blog inside your website. So in the blog post, you are basically like giving, like very personal, engaging information. And then you put under like, to download the research-based information related, click here or register here to get a free copy, right? So it's creating that like intro, so people go and do it. Sometimes that can be, like a useful strategy. So it's not that dry, like I click and I see you asking me for my information, but instead like I'm giving you this and now click here. Yes.
Oh, that's another VR one. Okay, so I was going to say, is anybody here from CIT VR? But that's a VR site. Okay, so I won't ask about further detail on how they achieved that issue. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to share with us about? Do you get any pushback from our funders about the global summative aggregated nature of what we report? No? I see one. Rebecca's shaking her head no. If not, then that's super helpful to know as well.
The one thing I think too is there's one thing of data for reporting purposes to show impact. There's another use of data to meet the needs of your users and to be able to know the breadth of those users, the roles that they play, their purpose in being on your site, and what they're looking for in meeting those needs. And I think it's a trick to be able to find the balance of how you capture that information to give them what they're looking for, but also make it easy to do that. So
in the end, I feel it's really about the trends. And speaking to what you're saying, I think as long as our folks who are clicking that are getting captured in MailChimp and analytics and so forth are about 75 to 80% state people, and that's the same year after year, we know we don't have a problem. If it's starting to fade, and then we know we have a problem. So it's really less about a specific technique in a specific moment than the long game.
And that applies also to Jennifer's example when she was saying, like, in that elevator speech, they are using like 780,000 people. It is also, like sometimes like using, as you said, Peter, like that, like general, like idea, 80% or close to 80,000 instead of trying to count one by one, because again, it is the times in which we are living. When we think about dissemination, social media and the internet and access make a huge impact. So it is hard. It's not easy.
Thanks. Super helpful. If you all come up with good stuff, if we could revisit this periodically. Rebecca, it sounds like you're working on at least having these discussions. So interested. Thank you. We get everything we needed, Dana? Anything else you have follow-up question about?
I'm good. I might follow up with Rebecca about kind of what you guys are doing with having people log in or, raise their hand to who they are as for different things, because that'd be helpful.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that question. I think what you heard and what I would say from even outside of this group is that there is no right answer. There's only better answers, no. And I'm always thinking, gosh, I hope Google, I don't know, doesn't go away or start charging. We rely on them for so many things in life. But so far, so good. And Rebecca and I were communicating in the background since she was doing the next presentation. And this is really what the community is for, right? When folks have questions about disseminations, needs, want to share something that they're doing that they think really works for them, that others would benefit from. So that's our purpose, as well as hearing from experts on occasion and having, more basic presentations, like we've been talking about external communications, sharing a webinar we read or an event that's going. These are all our purposes. We're hitting all of them today, with the exception of getting into Rebecca's presentation, but she was okay with it, and so we can do that next time. What she's going to be sharing is what Eliana has shared with us the last 2 sessions about external communications. Rebecca's going to talk about how they've been trying those things out, using those things in CSEP. So it's going to be an on the ground, here are the strategies and methods, here's what it's looked like for us, here are the things that we're still having challenges on, and you all can respond to that. There was one other thing I wanted to make sure to share with you. Yeah, I think one question I had forgotten to cover before was if there were any other OSEP conference dissemination related learnings, if anyone else had thought of something that we should take on as a group or talked about something that was especially interesting outside of that depth that we shared before. So it's such a great place. My thoughts just from running into someone in the hallway, I just got a million thoughts over time. And it was fun to watch others like Rebecca as the somewhat new project director for CSEP, watching Rebecca talk with someone from Cedar and seeing that cross-pollination was really fun. Any cross-pollination ideas that you all got that you wanted to bring back to the group related to dissemination?
Well, there was one panel on the second day where we were shown 3 examples, 3 levels of depth of the use of AI to edit text.
Yep.
And first was just written by a human, second was generated by AI and then massaged by a human, and the third was total AI. And so that's kind of a level of what's your level of AI literacy at in terms of your awareness of whether this was written by a person or completely computer generated or somewhere between. So,
well, now we got to know, how did you do, Peter?
Well, I've been using ChatGPT as a helping aid, for better or worse, for about a year. So it was easy to spot it. And I do think there is a learning curve with it. I was prepared to think it could work miracles for the first, year. And now I'm much more circumspect, but I'm still positive about it as a helping tool for sure.
Yeah, I was surprised. So in SPDIG land, State Personnel Development Grant land, we had Kevin Johnson from the department come speak about AI, and he's in the Office of Education Technology here, which is a very small office, but they get a lot done considering their size. And people were really interested in it. So, you know, I don't necessarily think about the SEAs as being so interested in using it, but they very much were. I just gave a little table about how to use AI that I thought was kind of fun and related to what you're saying, Peter. So as a utility player, as a wing person, as a fairy godmother, and no use, and what it means for human involvement, robot involvement, and benefit. Hootsuite has, it's pretty little. I should probably give you the link too. Hootsuite has had some nice information. They've shared statistics about trying to think of where I keep that. They shared statistics on how people feel about artificial intelligence being part of communications. And it's really like I think it's pretty in line with what you would guess. Age really matters in how people feel about using AI. But if I can find it out, I will share that with you because I thought it was somewhat informative. And you know, talking about best practices, ethical use of AI in communications, what you need to say about your use of AI, but also the responses you might get in terms of ages, demographics, response to use of AI. So I'll try to find that just so I can share it with you all in the future. Well, I want to say thank you. Thank you, Peter, Rebecca, Eliana, Mary, Dana, Amy, and everyone who shared their thoughts. And thank you, Shoshana, for all the help that you have given us, making this run smoothly and helping us reach our objectives. Thank you for your strong work with us. And we will see you all next month, where we will get into Rebecca's presentation about external communications. Third time's charm. All right, take care, everyone.